you fear that burnout will happen again? By that I mean maybe you're already experiencing it, or maybe you experienced it recently, given especially that the last 2 years have been pretty funky for most of us. So, even as you're thinking about this question, here's what I want to share with you. But before I do that, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Rahul George, and I am India's premier hypnosis coach. So here's the question again, right? Maybe the question is, will the burnout happen again? And what I've put together is six steps, six thoughts, six ideas that can definitely help you, right? So let's get right into it. The first thing to consider is denial. And by that I mean either you're thinking that it'll never happen again, and maybe that's also sort of linked to the fact that you didn't believe that it happened to you the first time, right? Maybe you believe that you're a very strong person and that bad things have never happened to me, and so considering that you had this burnout already, somewhere you believe that no, it didn't happen or it'll never happen again. And so denial in itself is quite a dangerous recipe to play with, because fact is, and chances are that if you're not mindful of what actually happened, denial will kind of trigger you at some point to have a similar experience again. And I'm not just saying this, I've seen this in my own life, I've seen this in the lives of hundreds of clients and hundreds of students that I've worked with. By students, I mean not just people in college and young entrepreneurs and professionals, but I'm talking about anybody, like people in their 40s, people in their 50s even. So what I'm saying is, the first thing to be very, very mindful of is denial, right? So maybe ask yourself this question, right? Am I in denial right now, right? Am I sort of like disbelieving that I actually experienced burnout? So that's the first thing to consider. The second thing, and this is really, really powerful when you actually start to pay attention, which is maybe you're missing the message. And by that I mean that possibly you've not taken the time to assess, to reflect on why did this burnout happen, one, and secondly, what was the implication of this burnout, right? Because typically when the burnout happened, it was also sort of symptomatic of something that was beneath the surface. So if you've kind of pushed things away, hence denial, and you don't want to take the time to really reflect and assess what's happening in your life, and what was the meaning of having this burnout, the chances are that you're actually setting yourself up to sort of like fulfill the prophecy of, oh, I hope and I really fear that the burnout should never happen again, right? So remember, the second thing to keep in mind is that ask yourself this question, right? What is the message of the burnout that I experienced? Like what was the underlying message? So let's assume you've gone past denial, so you agree that it happened, and two is that you start to kind of reflect on what is the meaning of this experience that you had. The third thing that can happen is typically you start to make sort of like half-hearted, or as we say, half-assed attempts at really kind of making a difference, right? Maybe it's in the context of health, maybe it's in the context of your relationships, maybe it's in the context of the kind of work that you're doing, right? I'm not saying that you have to quit your job or that you have to sort of do something completely different, but typically at this stage, you're possibly only making like half attempts, right? So, and somewhere, if you think about it, denial is one of the reasons why you're not fully committing. So, again, question here, ask yourself, am I fully committed to turn my life around, right? That's really the question. So let's assume we get through all three, right? Where you say, okay, no more half attempts from this point on. I'm going to be fully committed to really making a difference in my life. Then let's look at the fourth thing to consider, which is you start looking for resources. Now the good news is today, because we have um, we've got YouTube, we've got like so many of these resources that help us to be able to get more information. There are a lot of people out there that have also, like you, been through similar situations, and they have turned their life around, right? Either they found a way to become more connected to themselves, connected to their family, connected to their community, and as you start to actually look for resources, it's very, very important that here's one thing to keep in mind: keep looking for resources, don't stop, right? Essentially what I'm saying is keep going, right? Like when I had an experience of like an extreme burnout where I had to really kind of like reassess what I wanted to do with my life for the rest of my life, uh, that began 15 years ago, and I haven't stopped. There's a lot more that I know now that I didn't know then. However, I still look at this process of research and resources like as if I'm a student. Maybe not on day one of college or school, but I am still keeping an open mind. I am still keeping myself open to learn more, right? So very important that you keep looking for resources. Question here is, are you looking for resources? One. Two is, what are some of those resources that you started looking for in your own context specifically? So please, drop a comment below. What are some of these resources that you have found that have really made a difference in your life? And the reason also why I'm saying this is because you never know, the resources that you find and now that you share here can definitely help other people that are in a similar place that you are in right now. So that's the fourth point to keep in mind. The fifth is where you really start to begin this process of healing, right? Because if you think about it, burnout is like, it's like your body is actually talking to you. So now that you've made it a point to start listening to your body, you'll start to notice that there are parts of your body, there are parts of your mind that start to heal. And why am I saying this? Because maybe it's in the words that you speak. Maybe it's in the kind of food that you're, changing. So maybe if earlier you were only looking at fried foods and things like that, maybe now you're starting to find food that makes you feel more whole, that makes you feel better, right? And I don't mean it in a temporary sort of like what is it they call it? Empty carbs, right? So not rather than that kind of food, like comfort food, you're starting to make changes in what you consume. And food is not only in the context of like the actual the physical food, but it's also in what you consume digitally, right? So these are some of the places where you'll start to notice that if you are, as I said, if you're committed to making that change, you're now starting to start that healing process, which means you start to become more aware, more mindful, more present to to your choices that you're making, right? So that's the fifth thing. So just to quickly recap, in this video maybe there won't be subtitles, but I'll probably record this again and include subtitles so that you can watch this at length. And definitely please do share this with others if people who are going through burnout at this point or have recently, right? So the first thing to be mindful of is denial, which means you're starting to you're not agreeing to the fact that you had a burnout, right? So one is denial. Two is maybe you're missing the message, which means you've not really figured out why it happened, right? So that's the second. The third point to keep in mind is half attempts, which means you may, for a moment, you may kind of decide to sort of like eat clean or like change your lifestyle, but you do it only temporarily. So that's something to be very, very mindful of, which is, are you still stuck at doing making half attempts, or have you decided to really make a difference, right? So that's the third point. And the fourth thing to start being mindful of is you start to look for resources. And resources are all over the place. It's people that you meet, it's videos like this that you watch, it's things that you consume and that you find on YouTube and LinkedIn and so many of these really powerful places where you can get good information, made by people who have actually been through it, so they know what the hell they're talking about, right? It's not just some theoretical understanding, shall we say. So that's the fourth. The fifth, like I said, is where you start this process of healing. And the more you start this process of healing and the deeper you allow that healing to go, you will start to notice that your life starts to change. You'll start to notice it in the kind of conversations that you start having with people, especially the ones closest to you. And of course, in a wider circle in terms of maybe relatives that you don't see that often, or maybe, colleagues, or, let's say clients for that matter. And you'll start to notice that this is where you know that the healing is starting to take root. Last but not the least, and this is really where it all starts to come together, right? Where it literally the plan comes together, which is where you'll find yourself starting to share the message, right? Exactly like what I'm doing with you right now. So keep this in mind, and along the way, even when you start to share the message, you'll find sometimes that you can probably get in your own way when you're trying to share the message. So I'll also know if you got to this point of the video. If that's you, right, I want you to type you in the comment box below, right? If you're that person who's right now, you want to say it, you want to share a message, but somehow you kind of get caught up in your own mind. You're like, oh, what will people say, or what will my spouse think, or my boss, or friends, family, you name it, right? Or what will people say, basically. So this is basically one way of really taking charge and seeing that burnout that you had or that you're going through right now as a blessing in disguise. I'm saying that again. It's like literally this is a moment for you to see what you experienced as a blessing, and now it need not be disguised anymore because you're willing. The fact that you're here at this point actually listening to and watching this video, it just means that you've changed as a person and that you are willing to learn and grow, right? So I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to read your comments, and also and if you have any questions, please do leave a comment in the chat box below, and I will definitely respond to it. And of course, there will be many more videos that I intend to make. So if there's any particular topic that you want to know more about in this context of dealing with burnout, I just want you to know I'm here for you. So please do drop a message below. And before I sign off, I just want to say thank you for listening, for watching, for um, uh, contributing just by actually being here and responding. So this is me signing off. I am Rahul George, and I'm really, really glad that you stuck around and you've got to this point in the video. So take care. Wishing you all the best. God bless. Bye.